I always knew there was something off about my husband's relationship with his best friend Megan, but every time I brought it up, he brushed it off, saying I was just being jealous for no reason. Then, one night, when my instincts screamed at me that something was wrong, I checked his phone, and the truth left me stunned. I never thought uncovering one secret would lead to a cascade of shocking revelations about my husband's family. But perhaps the most shocking truth was still waiting for me ahead. I never imagined I would one day have to go through my husband's phone. 5 years of marriage, we had been through so much together. But there was always one thing that made me uneasy. His relationship with Megan, his so-called childhood best friend. From the start, I tried to accept her presence in my husband's life. They had grown up together, shared everything, and despite my discomfort, I believed him when he said Megan was nothing more than a sister to him. But over time, she became an ever-present force in our lives. She had a key to our house, dropped by unannounced, and sat at our dinner table as if she owned the place. Their texting never stopped. Morning, noon, or deep into the night. I'm not the type to get jealous over nothing, but there's one truth every woman knows. When your intuition warns you, something is definitely wrong. And my instincts had been screaming at me for the past 2 months. My husband had changed. He came home late, avoided my gaze, and most importantly, his phone never left his hands. If I walked into the room, he would quickly lock the screen. If I asked who he was texting, the answer was always, just work stuff. Then one night, he went to take a shower, leaving his phone on the bed, its screen still glowing. A message popped up from an unsaved number. I miss you so much. When can we finally be together without hiding? My throat went dry and my heart pounded. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone and opened the conversation. And in that moment, I knew my world had just crumbled. I stared at her. She sighed, looking away. Our marriage was never truly happy. He always controlled everything, acted like he was the one in charge. I had my doubts, but never proof. Then an awful thought struck me. What about Megan? Has he ever treated her differently? She hesitated, and in that moment I knew she had wondered the same thing. And then 1 week later, we got the answer. Megan wasn't just my husband's mistress. She was his sister. I clenched my fists under the table, feeling my blood boil. He looked directly at me as he spoke, a smug smirk on his face. I could handle betrayal, I could handle lies. But being mocked right to my face, I stood up abruptly, pushing my chair back. The entire table fell silent as I spoke, my voice cold and deliberate. Yes, Megan will always be a part of this family. I'm sure everyone will be thrilled to know she's been sleeping with my husband. The room froze. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then sharp gasps filled the air. Megan turned pale, her mouth agape. My husband shot to his feet, grabbing my arm. Don't do this. But I had endured enough. Why not? I pulled my arm away, staring straight into my father-in-law's eyes. Why should I stay silent, so you can keep protecting your son's mistress? My mother-in-law stood up, her eyes blazing. Is it true? She turned to my husband, her voice trembling. Is it true? No one answered. No one dared look her in the eyes. And that was answer enough. I had nothing more to say. I turned and walked away, leaving behind a party that had collapsed under the weight of its own lies. I left the party, but the aftermath followed me. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, my husband, my father-in-law, even relatives trying to calm things down. But I ignored them. I knew exactly what they wanted, to silence me. I went to my mother's house. She didn't ask questions, just opened her arms and hugged me. And in that moment, all my anger turned into pain. I had lost too much. Love, trust, 5 years of marriage I had fought to keep. The next morning I received a text from my mother-in-law. Do you have time to talk? I wasn't surprised. She had always been the only one who didn't blindly support Megan. And after last night, I knew she was just as furious as I was. We met at a small cafe. She grabbed my hand the moment I sat down, her eyes red and tired. I can't believe this, she said, voice shaking. But what angers me most is my husband. He's still defending Megan like this is nothing. I clenched my coffee cup. He didn't just defend her, he told me I should accept it. She fell silent for a moment, then suddenly said something that sent chills down my spine. I'm starting to suspect, maybe he's done something like this before. It was just a mistake, and that he still loved me. But how could I believe the words of a man who had betrayed me over and over again? Messages stretching back for months, secret meetings, words of love and affection, things he never said to me but had no hesitation saying to someone else. As I scrolled to the top, the name finally appeared. Megan. I felt like all the strength had been drained from my body, yet I forced myself to read every message. How long had this been going on? How long had they been betraying me? And the most painful realization, they had never planned to stop. I clenched his phone in my hands, my heart breaking into pieces. The bathroom door opened, steam drifting into the room. He stepped out, towel drying his hair, smiling at me as if everything was normal. But I couldn't pretend anymore. I gripped his phone tighter, took a deep breath, and lifted my head. "Do you have anything to explain?" My voice was cold as I held the screen up for him to see. He froze. His face turned pale. And there it was, the panic in his eyes, something I had never seen before. From the moment I discovered the truth, it felt like I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. My husband dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness, swearing I didn't answer. I didn't cry. I just watched as he panicked, like an animal caught in a trap. The following days felt empty. I couldn't tell anyone, nor did I know what to do. But then, my husband made a shocking request. He wanted me to attend his family's BBQ party with him. "Just to keep up appearances," he said. "We need time to think. Don't make a scene." Appearances? After everything that happened? The thought enraged me, but I also knew that if I didn't go, it would only make people more suspicious. And a part of me wanted to see, would Megan have the audacity to show up as if nothing had happened? And of course she did. She laughed, chatted, greeted everyone warmly. She hugged my mother-in-law and held my father-in-law's hand a little too familiarly. But what disgusted me most? The way she looked at me with pity, as if I were the pathetic one. The party was full of fake cheer, and I sat quietly, watching everything. Then my father-in-law raised his glass, his voice full of pride. "Our family is truly wonderful, isn't it? And Megan, she'll always be a part of this family, whether some people like it or not." The revelation that Megan was not just my husband's mistress but also his sister was enough to make my stomach churn. I felt sick, physically, emotionally, in every way possible. How could I have been so blind? The night after the disastrous family barbecue, I locked myself in my room staring at the ceiling as my mind spun in endless circles. The pieces of the puzzle had been there all along, but I had never thought to put them together. The way his parents always defended Megan, the way they looked at me when I tried to question their bond, the way my husband always insisted that Megan was just like a sister to him, because she actually was. And yet, that wasn't the most twisted part of it all. The next morning, I woke up to relentless knocking on my apartment door. When I opened it, my mother-in-law stood there, her face pale, her eyes wild with desperation. "You need to leave," she whispered. "Now." My stomach clenched. "What are you talking about?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She was shaking. "You don't understand what you've done. You've exposed secrets that were never meant to be spoken, and now they won't let you go so easily." A cold wave of fear ran through me. "They?" She swallowed hard. "The family. My husband. My son. You don't know what they're capable of." I thought back to the way my father-in-law had smiled that night, the arrogance in his voice when he called Megan a part of the family as if daring me to say something, the way my husband had tried to silence me. "What are they capable of?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, then looked me dead in the eyes. "Do you know what happened to the last woman who found out the truth?" A chill ran down my spine. I had never heard of my husband having an ex-wife. I had never seen any mention of a previous marriage. But something in her expression told me there had been someone before me, and she was no longer here. I took a step back. "Are you saying they killed her?" My mother-in-law inhaled sharply, her hands trembling. She didn't confirm it, but she didn't deny it either. "They made sure she disappeared." I felt my entire body go cold. "And you're telling me this now?" "Because you're different. Because you fought back." She grabbed my hands, squeezing them tightly. "Listen to me. Pack your things, get out of town, leave everything behind, and never look back." Terror gripped me. Could I do it? Could I really just walk away from my entire life, from everything I had built? Then I thought about Megan's smug smile, my husband's lies, my father-in-law's arrogance. I had no choice. I was running for my life.